Leadership is about release. What do you mean, Ian? What on earth do you mean that leadership is about release? So let's talk a little bit about this. I personally believe that the ultimate goal of leadership is release or launch. And so this is all about, we get this example from parenting. In fact, Ryan was one of the first ones who said to me this idea that, and he said he read it somewhere, but we can't find the original source. And the idea is that our job as parents is not to raise children, but to raise adults. And isn't that an interesting concept that our job is actually to raise adults? So we're going to look at this. We're going to start about this, what is release all about, by looking at parenting, and then we're going to move on to leadership. So from a parenting point of view, the goal is launch. The path is preparation for a big, bad, beautiful world. Yeah, that's where we're launching our people into. Our children get launched into a big, bad, beautiful world. And we want them to understand how big, how bad, and how beautiful it is. And so we really want to prepare them for that kind of scenario where they are prepared for this launch. And if we fail to do so, it could result in a failure to launch. So not preparing our people for the big, bad, beautiful world could mean that they fail to launch. Welcome, Anissa. Welcome, Candice. Good to have you along as well. We really don't want that failure to launch. We don't want that scenario where our children are in their 30s and they're still dependent on us and they can't make their own decisions and all that kind of stuff. So we really want to get that launch right. I know for myself, I had my children quite young. They had left the home by the time I was 45. And I thought that was really convenient because it resulted in me being able to travel the world and have incredible liberty because they had already left the home. Now, it'll differ from child to child, but isn't that an interesting concept? So what does that mean for us as leaders? Let's look at it from that perspective. Our job really is to equip our people for flight. Our job is to prepare them for going solo. So yes, we may still be in the control tower for a while, able to talk them through some stuff, but actually we want them to be able to fly solo. And therefore, our ultimate job as leaders is to launch our people. Now, this is going to take quite a lot of work because what do we need to do to prepare them for that? What is the whole process? So we're going to get to the how at the end. But right now, I just want to say, my opinion is the ultimate goal of leadership is launch. It is release. It is to get them to fly. And that's what I'm focusing on. Welcome, AJ. Good to have you along as well. So let's do a little bit of an aha slide. So, I know way too much about you. Yes, I probably do. It's my job. It's my job. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a poll. So we're going to do the usual AHA Slides poll. So if you want to, you can pick up your phone and use this QR code. If you don't want to, you simply go to ahaslides.com/MIU, capital letters, Morpheus Intelligence Update. So if you go to ahaslides.com, Morpheus Intelligence Update, I'm going to kick off our first poll. MIU is all you need there, ahaslides.com/MIU. Some of you will pick this up on your phones and do it that way, in which case it'll open as well. And I'm going to just do that to make sure it's working for me as well. There we go. Okay, now I can participate too. So let's have a look at the first question. And the first question is this: what prevents you from launching your people? And you can choose a few options here. And I notice what the options are. You don't want to lose control. They aren't equipped to fly. You don't trust them. You fear that they won't manage without you. You fear that they will manage without you. And you'll lose your identity or purpose. So, okay, the fear that they will manage without me is quite clear. Let's see. I'm going to add in my own one over here. So, very good. Okay, so lack of equipping seems to be the biggest one so far. Anybody else who wants to participate, just ahaslides.com/capital MIU. And then you can be adding in a little bit of this. Let's see what we're getting. Okay, so not equipped is the biggest reason. Okay, some of our personal issues, don't want to lose control. I fear they won't manage without me. I fear they will manage without me. I will lose my identity. But also there's trust coming in there. And I think trust quite often linked to are they equipped or not to fly. Okay, very interesting. Anybody still wanting to get in? I'm going to give it 30 more seconds and then we will close this off. But isn't that fascinating, the very high percentage we have around this? Half of you did connect with they aren't equipped to fly. And that then begs the question, is our job as leaders maybe to do a better job of equipping? Is that maybe what it's all about? So that's it there. Okay, I think that's probably enough time on that. So we got a little bit more in around control and trust and fear that they won't manage without, and fear that they will manage without. I love that fear that they will manage without. I think that's brilliant. Okay, excellent. Losing identity, shrinking back a little bit now. All right, so I'm going to stop this share for a moment. We will come back to AHA slides a bit later on in the presentation, but let me continue with talking you through. So we've dealt with the what now. The next thing to be looking at is, okay, we did the poll already. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at now is the why. Why is this so important? I don't mind people flying. Okay. All right. Thank you, AJ. Very good. All right. Let's have a quick look at why. Why is this so important? So what I want to just take you through here, a couple of points around this. It's important for two main reasons. It's important, or two main categories. It's important for them, and it's important for you as the leader. Let's start with why it's important for them. If you are always solving, advising, or telling, you are actually making your people dependent on you. If you're always solving, advising, or telling, you're making them dependent. Now, often in life, when we're starting off, we do need to do a bit of telling and solving and advising. But the idea is that if we keep doing it, we're actually increasing their dependence on us. And they need, for thriving, they need a trust environment where they are trusted to start making their own decisions. They need a trust environment where they can start to think for themselves. They can start to look at this for themselves. And basically, while we are always solving, advising, or telling, they cannot take ownership of their tasks, their initiative, their lives. And so we need to start weaning them off us, and that way they can have this ownership, and that will enable what for them? Thinking, creativity, innovation. And isn't that where we really want to go with our people? Whether we're talking as parents, whether we're talking as leaders, we ultimately want them to fly. So we want them to be empowered to do better quality thinking, to use their creativity, to be innovative. And so that is why it's so important for them. They will never reach full satisfaction in life, a meaningful life, if you are doing everything for them. And that's so critical. But what about for yourself? What about for yourself? Well, there's a little myth I want to just break right now, and that is that you're indispensable. You're not. And if you are behaving like you are, guess what? You're a bottleneck. You are a bottleneck. You are limiting their ability to function. I've watched this with teams, where team leaders get really busy and then the team gets stopped every time. They get stuck because they're waiting for a decision from the leader, or they're waiting for an input from a leader. And we don't want that. We want to create teams that are empowered to make their own decisions, to make their own calls. And that's what we're really aiming for. And so don't be a bottleneck for your team, which I guess would be a benefit for them if you weren't. But actually it's for yourself. Is stop making yourself indispensable. Stop making yourself irreplaceable. Because basically what happens is the more you do, the less you lead. the more you do, the less you lead. And the idea is to grow your people. And leading is getting them to do the doing. I was having a conversation with a leader yesterday, a coaching conversation, and she was talking about a scenario where she delegated something and ended up having to do the same amount of work as if she'd done the job herself. And I said to her, that's great, but project that forward. What if next month it only takes you 60% of the time to do the checking? What if the following month only takes you 40% of the time? You're actually gaining more time back. So the more you do, the less you lead. We want to grow our people that they can be doing the doing and we can be doing the leading. And then furthermore, and this one I come across every time when I'm training leaders, is operational versus strategic leadership. When we are doing the doing, when our people cannot function independently, where they cannot be self-reliant, then we get caught up in only operational leadership. We're only involved in what is the day-to-day task, what has to happen here, what has to happen there. And we're operating in the operational space. We're not breaking free to think a bit more strategically, which is how could we improve things? How could we do things differently? How could we plan better? How could we provide better services? That's the strategic leadership. And we as leaders need time to think. And while our people are dependent on us, we have very little time to think because we're sucked into every single little operational issue. Whereas if they are able to be more independent, we can start thinking a bit more strategically and operating at a higher level, which is really what we are there for. I often joke in the corporate space with leaders who tell me, no, they can't delegate so much because they're the only ones who know how to do it right. They can only do this task and all the rest. And I say to them, okay, so actually what you're saying is you should have a salary reduction because you're behaving as one of your people. You're not behaving as the leader. And therefore you should be paid as one of the staff members, not as one of the leaders. And they have these big shocked faces because I'm saying, so what are you spending your time on? Are you spending your time on doing or leading? What are you paid for? What's your job? What's your did you get a promotion with, for doing the old job? So really quite interesting. And the number one, I'm getting to the final one here, is if you don't prepare your people and launch them, you cannot take vacations. So if you ever want to take a vacation, you better have your people flying. And that gets really interesting. This starts to impact our health. It starts to impact the way that we operate in so many different ways. And so many of us are in positions where we are sucked into things and we're not actually able to be at liberty. Or you'll take a vacation, but you'll spend 4 hours a day on your phone or your laptop or something, and we really don't want that. So we really want to empower our people to be able to fly. Now, who needs this? Let's talk a little bit about the who. Who needs this thing of this launch of our people? And the first thing is, again, your people need it. Same story. They need it because, guess what? Leadership is not primarily about what your people want. It's about what they need. And they might think, well, it'll be lovely just to sit back and you take all the decisions. But great leadership empowers what they need. And what do they need? They need to be adults. They need to be behaving as adults. They need to be empowered to be more independent, to be able to function without you. And so psychologically, emotionally, they need that. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, let me see how bad a job I can do today. Or let me see if I can learn nothing today. No, they do actually want to learn, and it's a fundamental psychological need to grow. And so my second reason of why they need it is they want to grow and they want to show their competence and self-reliance. Now, there's some interesting research on this. This thing of if we can grow, every day grow in some way, or every week grow in some way, and we can demonstrate that growth. In other words, we can demonstrate that competence. We can demonstrate our usage of that particular skill or whatever it might be. This actually boosts our self-leadership, our self-motivation. So the research is showing that if people can grow and show their competence, they automatically will become more motivated and more self-reliant. And so while we are stifling that growth, we're actually getting in the way of their self-motivation. And basically, psychological and emotional health means being independent and interdependent. We don't want to be codependent, which is how so much of our parenting and leadership actually works, is where we're actually making the people codependent on us instead of liberating them. So they need it to be healthy human beings. That's what it comes down to. Now, you need it. Why do you need it? Well, conscious leaders don't get their emotional and psychological needs met by their people or children. So this is why I was asking that poll question earlier on. Is your parenting all about you, your needs, your social needs? Conscious leaders don't do that. Conscious leaders get their needs met elsewhere. They don't expect their needs to be met by their people. They will get their relational needs, their emotional needs, their psychological needs met elsewhere, and therefore they have no fear in launching their people, because it's not going to inhibit their personality, who they really are. It's not going to make them feel they're losing of identity or purpose. So conscious leaders, your identity and your purpose is not in your people. Your identity and your purpose is in how well they fly and how well they're launched, and you will get your own emotional needs met elsewhere. Secondly, conscious leaders are always growing, stretching, and empowering their people. Part of conscious leadership is continually challenging, moving, growing, stretching, and empowering. And we need it to be effective as leaders. And in fact, we could even go as far as to say conscious leaders build conscious leaders. And that's really what we want. And one of the big marks of great leadership is the number of leaders that are generated by you. While your people are dependent on you, they cannot become leaders. And we want to have conscious leaders building conscious leaders. So you need this. You need this for your life. You need this for your leadership. You need this for your influence. All right, now let me get on to the lovely question of when. And you may be thinking, when? It's all about priorities. So we want to get going immediately. And the way to do this is to have a mindset of all of our leadership begins with the end in mind. And so if the goal of leadership is launch, then all of our leadership should be pushing us, our people, towards being launched. So we want to begin with the end in mind. We want to have that as our strategy for our leadership. We want to connect with their uniqueness and aspirations, because you don't want to try and launch them into something which they're not. You want to launch them into who they really are. You want to launch them into their essence, their uniqueness, their aspirations. So you need to be connecting, knowing who they are, getting to know them. And I'll give you one little thing that came out of some Gallup research, where Gallup had a look at the top 25%, top quartile of all high-performing teams, and then looked at what did those team leaders and managers do differently, and what made them set them apart. And they looked at it and they found they had nothing in common. Some hadn't finished their high school. Some had PhDs. Some of them were all sorts of culture groups, all sorts of socioeconomic environments. They couldn't find a pattern except for one thing. All of these highly effective team leaders and managers had one thing in common. They treated their people as individuals. They treated their people as individuals. So conscious leadership is not one-size-fits-all leadership. It is tailoring what you're doing for each of your people, each of your children, whoever it is. It's tailoring what you're doing. And we want to then equip them with the appropriate knowledge and skills for them to be able to fly. I know this is kind of so logical, but I'm just taking you through the points. We want to facilitate growing their motivation and confidence. So not only do we want to equip them in terms of competence, the knowledge and skill, but also the motivation and confidence and the mindsets. And we want to celebrate milestones, just like, we celebrate somebody flying solo. We celebrate if we are training somebody to fly, we'll celebrate every piece of progress we'll celebrate, and we want to keep celebrating. And then we want to launch without abandoning. want to launch without abandoning, that they still can get to the control tower and say, hang on, I've forgotten what to do here. And you can give them that little bit. You can remind them of what they know. Because that's really what we do at that point. We don't really tell them anymore. We remind them of what they already know. And so what we do is we do a process of checking in, not checking up. And this has actually come very interesting through the work from home scenario of the last couple of years, where we've discovered that check-ups demotivate, check-ins motivate. And so my sort of favorite little phrase that I use there is I would go, hi, just checking in. Is there anything I need to know? Is there anything you need from me? So rather than checking up, which is like, how are you doing on this? What has happened to this? Where's that going? So it's one of those kind of things. And then you get all the information that you are looking for. Okay, so that is the when. Now we're going to do another poll, but this time I'm going to ask you for your inputs. So we're going to go back to AHA slides. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff there. Wow, I'm just looking at the chat. I'm going to pick up on this in a moment, Anissa and everybody. But let me share the screen again so that we can go to the next thing in the AHA slides, which is this. What are your launch priorities for your people? What are your launch priorities for your people? So you can put in free text here. You can put in anything you want. But just based on what we've been talking about, what are some of the things that you want to do next for your people? So interesting. Mindsets coming up already from a few of you. Okay, know-how, empowerment, competence. Now, by the way, if you see any word on the screen that you really like and want to boost it, type that word in again and it will make it bigger and bolder. So you can actually submit multiple times. Autonomy and confidence are growing bigger. Self-leadership, I love it. Okay. Self-actualization. Wow, look at some of these words. We will be putting this out on the handout, by the way. So autonomy is coming up as the biggest one at the moment. And what have we got here? Equipping mindsets, here-centered teams. Oh, I like that. Okay. Remind them, not tell them. Yeah, remind them, not tell them. Nice one. Confidence, trust, care, create confidence, mindsets, independence. Okay, top priorities. As parents and as leaders, as conscious leaders, it's all about building that autonomy. And by the way, the autonomy that we build is that they are competent, they are confident, they are motivated, and they have the right mindset, and they're linked to the bigger picture. They know what's going on. And so the autonomy is not without boundaries, but autonomy in itself is motivational. It's a little bit like the most creative football players in the world play within the field. They don't go and try and play in the stadium. So there's still boundaries. There's still a lot of clarity within the autonomy, and the freedom comes from having that structure. Remind them, not tell them is coming up again. Care is coming up again. Brilliant. Launch without abandoning. Nice one. Nice one. Now, it doesn't mean that one day they don't completely leave, but I'm sure any parent who's had a child leave home, there are times when you get a frantic phone call. I don't know what to do here. And you can maybe get them going, but ultimately you want them to be able to function completely independently. Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your contributions, because this now becomes part of our handout. So thank you very much for your help. All right, let me get on to the how. I know we've only got 3 minutes left, but let me get on to the how. And it's not going to take long, because a lot of this is stuff that we've already kind of been looking at. So the how is as follows. Discover who they are is my most important one here. You can use tools like Strengths Finder, Standout, DISC assessments, whatever if that's going to help you. But also connect with who they are and what they want. We really want to connect with them in that sense. Pay attention. Look at their successes and failures. Look at their energy highs and lows. Pay attention to what they are naturally drawn towards and what they are averse to. And so we want to be discovering who they are. Secondly, equip them. And we've spoken about this again: knowledge and skills, values and culture, purpose and motivation, confidence and trust. We want them to be equipped to know where we're going and what we're doing. And then we prepare for launch. It's that simple. Maybe they do a few solo flights. You listen to their feedback. You ask lots of good questions so that they can solve their own problems moving forward. And then we can launch. And I'm a great believer in holding some sort of an event, some sort of a handover event, some sort of a launch event, some sort of a ceremony maybe, where they can be launched. I realized that I'd sort of missed out on some of this, and I went and staged my own at the age of 49. I staged my own launch event at the age of 49, got my friends to contribute and say a whole lot of things. Ryan was actually there. Thank you, Ryan. And it was really quite an interesting thing. Now I'm right out of time, but let's have a look at some Q&A. If anybody's got a question, please pop it in. And while you're doing that, if you've got a question in the chat, I'm going to look at the chat now. I just want to say that next month we don't have an intelligence update because it is our retreat month. We will be at the Design My Leadership retreat in the Drakensberg, and we will then be back in May with the next intelligence update, and it's going to be a leadership session on connecting with self, connecting with others. That's going to be the focus of the May one.